Hello, F1 fans. Welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're joined by myself, Vasco, and Harry. And today we'll be talking about the US Grand Prix in Austin since we have so many US Grand Prix we need to specify. And we'll start off with the quali for the main race as it was a sprint weekend. And it was a pretty close qualifying, actually. Verstappen got pole, but then got his lap deleted and dropped into P6. And it meant that Charles Leclerc took his third pole position of the season. And we had both Aston Martins out in Q1, which was pretty surprising, especially for Alonso. And another Perez bad quali. He finished in a disappointing 9th, but that's pretty much what you can expect from Checo. And now we can move on to the sprint.
Yeah, first about the quali. Also, the two Williams got out in Q1, which was very disappointing for them. And very good qualifying session for Gasly and Ocon for both Alpines. Let's move to the sprint shootout. For the sprint shootout, Verstappen took pole position, followed by Leclerc and Hamilton. Great sprint qualifying session for both McLarens. And I think that's essentially it. About the sprint, the race, only the first lap was really interesting, and after that nothing special happened for the rest of the sprint race. So yeah, another boring sprint race, and I don't think I like the format. I don't know what to think about it, but I think it's only, as Verstappen said, it's getting boring and it's getting the joy out of the race on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with Max on this topic because I think that the sprint is not necessary at this point in time in Formula 1, and as we saw, only the first lap was interesting, so it doesn't bring anything more to the fans.
Yeah, the sprint is pretty uneventful as usual. I mean, most sprint races are like that, and it's also quite an artificial way of creating more racing, which is why I also don't enjoy it. But yeah, in the meantime, during the sprint, Max won, Lewis finished second, and Charles Leclerc took P3. But now let's move on to Sunday's race, which was pretty interesting, especially from a strategic point of view. We can start off with the results, the final results, because we had some disqualifications. Max Verstappen took the win, Lando Norris got second, and Carlos Sainz got a podium after the race. So what are you guys' thoughts on how the results panned out?
Well, it was crazy. In the end, it was really crazy. I went to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I realized that the race that I've watched has a different ranking in the morning because of the disqualification of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Also, we have to mention Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, and Esteban Ocon, who were DNFs. And yeah, that totally changed the order in the race. And in the end, we had Verstappen taking the win, and after that, Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz on the podium.
Yeah, moving on, we have to begin with the opening lap of the race, which was eventful. Lando Norris got an awesome start. He moved to P1 by the first corner. Then there was a battle between Hamilton and Verstappen. Hamilton pushed off Verstappen out of the track. Also, back in the grid, there was an Ocon and Piastri incident, which cost both of them a lot because by lap 10, both of them were out of the race.
Yeah, and that was a really great opportunity for both Alpine and McLaren to get some more points because of the chaotic race. And Ocon and Piastri, simply because of their crash, they couldn't capitalize on it. But let's move on to the most interesting topic, I think, of the race, and that is the strategy battle. We have Ferrari fan here. They divided the strategy for Sainz and for Leclerc, and I think the more successful one was Sainz's strategy. So what is the problem with Ferrari? What was the problem with Leclerc's strategy and his drop from pole position to 6th in the end, and after that disqualification?
I think Ferrari realized that they didn't have race pace because we saw in the beginning of the race how Leclerc was dropping down. He lost the start, and then Hamilton and Verstappen passed him within a few laps as well. And I think that was their last hope at trying to get back those positions. And it obviously didn't work out. And this is very concerning for Ferrari as they're trying to close down Mercedes in the constructors. But Sainz, he got a good strategy. The two-stop was clearly the better strategy. And he finished less than 5 seconds behind Norris, even though I don't think the TV at any point showed Sainz on the screen, but he actually had some good pace. But yeah, Leclerc, I was really disappointed. Starting on pole position and to not really capitalize on that in any way. He was outside of the podium within like 10, 15 laps, so really concerning for Ferrari, but strategy has always been an issue for them, so it's disappointing but not surprising.
Yeah, and another interesting thing that how lucky Sainz, Perez and Russell got because of disqualifications. They didn't have the best race. Sainz, it was alright, but again, for Perez and Russell, again, a bit disappointing. So, yeah, that was really lucky for them.
Yeah, I think we have to mention Max Verstappen's comeback, which isn't something surprising. I mean, he started P6, but we all knew he would be somewhere around P1 by the half of the race, and that's what actually happened. I mean, he was P1 by lap 30, I think.
Yeah, something like that. I'd like to applaud Red Bull for their strategy. They're the only ones that seemed like they knew what they were doing. I think the undercut was really effective. We saw Hamilton and Norris extend for too long, which cost them some valuable seconds, especially in Hamilton's case because he was closing up to Max towards the end, but he ran out of laps, maybe because of the strategy blunder. Yeah, impressive race from Max. It's actually very different race compared to the ones he's won this season, so I applaud him for this performance.
And also another thing with Red Bull is how calm they are during the race, and they have clear strategy. Verstappen is driving at his best level, and although he had some braking issues and we heard some screaming from Verstappen to his race engineer, in the end everything was calm, the strategy was great, and Red Bull managed to do their best and Max won the race. So this is how you should work in F1, because we saw a completely different face from Ferrari and Mercedes. They were a bit stressed, I think. They didn't have clear strategy, and we see that difference right now in the mindset between Red Bull and the teams below them, like Mercedes and Ferrari, and we can very clearly see their problems.
I mean, we can also mention that the fact that Red Bull keep winning races, they keep getting better and better at it, and they just know what to do. Lewis Hamilton, he hasn't won a race in 2 years. Ferrari have had one win this whole season, so they just don't know how to win. They don't know what it's like to be in that position, and that's why I feel like they seem to panic under pressure.
Yeah, but in Red Bull, we see that perfect symbiosis between Verstappen, his race engineer, and the whole team, while I don't really see that at Ferrari, which is obvious, but I don't see that at Mercedes anymore. I think Lewis have some problems with the strategy that Mercedes is giving to him, and also problems with pit stops, and it's not that perfect harmony that we saw from the beginning of the hybrid era till 2021, and I think that is slowing Lewis down a bit, although he's performing on amazing level. For his age, he's just amazing, and I think he's the second best talent-wise in F1 after Verstappen right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I also wanted to take note of the really bad pit stops that Mercedes made yesterday. They really need to up their game in order to be as competitive as possible and try to challenge Red Bull for race wins in the near future.
Yeah, moving down the order, we had some interesting results as a result of the disqualifications. Yuki Tsunoda, P8 and the fastest lap. He got as many points as AlphaTauri have gotten this whole season in just one race. But impressive performance from him. He was like running in the points the whole race pretty much. And I believe towards the end, he got a free pit stop since he had a huge gap to Alex Albon, put on the softs and set a fastest lap right at the end. But overall impressive performance from Yuki. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and when you compare him to Daniel Ricciardo, who finished last out of the finishers, he was P15. It makes it even more impressive.
I think it wasn't Ricciardo's fault. It was the poor strategy from AlphaTauri. They tried with only one pit stop, but it didn't quite work out because the car and Ricciardo, they simply didn't manage the tires well. And in the end, they made an attempt for softs for the last 7, 8, 9 laps, but it was a bit miserable in the end for Daniel Ricciardo. But overall, it wasn't bad weekend for AlphaTauri as they took 5 points. And going down the order, we can see double points for Williams, which is really impressive. Logan Sargent in his home race, debut points for him. So, yeah, really great race for Williams. Although they had to rely on DNFs and disqualifications, in the end, that 3 points for their drivers are the most important thing.
Yeah, and we can also mention Logan Sargent, actually, good race. He finished 1 second behind Alex Albon, so this is the first time he's ever been this close to his teammate. So I can applaud him for this performance, although he lucked into the points, obviously, because of the disqualifications especially.
Yeah, and just shout out to my boy Pierre Gasly taking 6th. Really good overall performance for him. And the whole season of Pierre Gasly at Alpine, I think he fit in that seat really well, although Alpine are not impressive at all.
Yeah, and as you spoke of the disqualifications, I think we have to discuss this as well, because it was a shock, complete shock for everyone when we understood this morning that Leclerc and Hamilton were disqualified. And it was due to their floors of the cars. They did not adhere to the regulations that were set by the FIA.
Yeah, basically during the race their cars were scraping a lot on the ground, and that caused the floor to change its size in a way, like it got reshaped. And I saw a picture which was quite fascinating to me of how the Mercedes and Ferrari were scraping the asphalt like crazy, but the Red Bull, it was fully in the air, not one spark in sight, which is once again more genius from how that car has been built. And overall, very frustrating disqualification, I'll say, for Lewis Hamilton, because this pretty much seals Sergio Perez second in the driver standings. This is a huge points loss for Lewis. I mean, he's had such an incredible season, and he had another great race yesterday, so it's a real shame for him. For Charles, it didn't matter as much, but also pretty disappointing to see that he got disqualified as well.
The only thing that I can say is another Adrian Newey masterclass.
Yeah, and maybe also Red Bull chose a setup that made the car be not as close to the asphalt as possible, and maybe this sacrificed their huge lead that they had like in previous races, but still this ensured that they won't be disqualified. They adhere to the regulations.
I don't even think that it was setup related. I just think that car is just so thought out in comparison to the other teams that are just, it feels like they're half a year behind in terms of development, and it's very concerning for next season as well. See if we're going to see any teams closer to Red Bull, but it really proves how brilliant the 2023 Red Bull is.
Well, only time will tell what is going to happen in the future. And I think that is all for the race. Really interesting weekend. I rated at least like 7.58 out of 10, because we didn't see like a bit chaotic races with some drama during this season, and that race in Austin was like a breath of fresh air.
It was more like a old school style F1 race in a way, with all the strategies and the leaders actually driving close to each other, so I enjoyed it a lot for sure. But now we'll move on to our highlights and disappointments of the weekend. Well, our surprises and disappointments of the weekend, but we'll start off with the highlights. Harry, what do you think about highlights?
Well, for highlights, I'll probably say that Logan Sargent got his first points, because I was quite surprised when I learned that he actually made it. And as you guys said, he was really close to Alex Albon, so impressive from him.
Yeah, I'll say my highlight was Yuki Tsunoda. I think it was a really great race that went under the radar because the AlphaTauri can only do so much, but really impressive to take away 5 points from that race.
I would say highlight of the weekend again, Max Verstappen in his masterclass, because even in races where he's not in a good position, he goes to the race, he's really calm, he has great strategy, and in the end it works out perfectly for him. And I also want to say something for Lewis Hamilton. Although the bad pit stops, the poor strategy, amazing performance from Lewis Hamilton, and I was really impressed of his driving during this weekend, although he was disqualified in the end. Let's move to our surprises and disappointments of the weekend, and after that, reactions to the predictions from the last race week. Harry, what was your most surprising thing this weekend?
Well, the most surprising thing, I would say that it's the same as the highlight, because it was a surprise that Logan Sargent got points. And my disappointment, honestly, George Russell, he was in a no man's land. He was really far away from Lewis Hamilton. He was not even close to the top 6, and I'm really dissatisfied with what he showed this weekend.
For me, the surprise of the weekend, I'll actually say the disqualifications. I did not expect that at all. And I really hate when disqualifications like after the race happen because it just makes everything you watch during the race feel irrelevant in a way. Like Lewis doesn't get his second place. Charles didn't get sixth place. You have Carlos Sainz on the podium I don't think he did one lap in the top three during the whole race. So that was pretty surprising for sure. And we haven't seen disqualifications in a while. As for disappointment, I'll actually mention Fernando Alonso because it is sad how much Aston Martin have regressed. And even Fernando to get knocked out in Q1 was very surprising. And he actually had a decent race, but then the suspension failure, which caused him to retire and get no points, and his points total is really seeming like it's about to crumble. Lando might catch up to him, and yeah, very concerning time for Aston Martin.
Yeah, I'll be short. Stroll was my surprise of the weekend. He took 7th place, and I just didn't even realize it until right now that he took 7th place. It's super random, but it's super interesting for me. And the most disappointing thing during this weekend for me was the crash between Esteban Ocon and Oscar Piastri that took both of them out of the race. Because I think they had really great opportunity to gather some points from this race, and with the disqualifications of Hamilton and Leclerc, I think that would have been really helpful, especially for McLaren and for Oscar Piastri's points in the ranking.
Now we'll move on to our predictions from last week, which were not the greatest to say the least. Mine were Haas points, which was somehow very close to happening. Hulkenberg only finished 2 seconds behind Logan Sargent, but alas, not enough disqualifications to put Nico Hulkenberg in the points. And I said no McLaren on the podium, which was obviously wrong because Lando was second. So yeah, that's 0 points for me.
Well, I said there would be a double Mercedes podium. Well, there was one Mercedes on the podium, but he got disqualified, so I was completely wrong with that. And a double Alpine DNF, one of them DNF'd. This was like closer to happening.
My predictions were both AlphaTauris to be in the points, and Yuki Tsunoda actually, he was in the points. Like, he got really good points, and Daniel Ricciardo, I think if he had a bit better strategy, he could have gone to that 10th place, and I would seem like a genius right now. But no, wrong prediction. And no DNFs, 2 disqualifications, 3 DNFs, 0 points for me.
Yeah, now we'll move on to our predictions for Mexico, which is next week. So my prediction, it's not even race related, but I believe that Red Bull will confirm their driver lineup by the end of the weekend. And AlphaTauri to overtake Haas in the constructors because they've been on fire, I'd say, recently. And they've been running close to the points and within the points last few races as well. So I think they could overtake Haas.
Yeah, their car seemed a bit better than what we saw in the beginning and during the season. My prediction is the King of Mexico, Sergio Perez, to be on the podium, which is a bit bold, but I think when he is in front of his home fans, in front of that cheering crowd, he'll manage to get this podium. And once again, we know he's in the fastest car, so that's his job. And another thing is double points for Alpine. Their car seemed really good during the race in Cota, and I think they can be good again in Mexico, something like P7, P8, something like that, and with some DNFs, why not even higher in the standing?
Well, my predictions are that one Mercedes will be in the top 2, which, considering how strong the car currently is probably, hopefully, going to happen. And the other one is that Valtteri Bottas gets points in Mexico, as this is a strong track for him, we know from the past. And yeah, I think, guys, this is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next race week. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us on AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook. And stay tuned for more of our content.
Thank you, and remember, if you no longer go for a gap that exists,
You're no longer a racing driver. Thank you, guys.